guys, I'm here with somebody who hasn't been around on my channel for a while. I mean, when's the last time? It was like Thor: The Dark World. But yeah, give it up for fellow Milky Juice member, Dan Torrey, aka Torreygnr1.
Hi everybody, how you doing?
Yes, Dan and I were trying to find a video, and we started talking about, this variant cover he found, and he was talking to me about it, of this, it was a variant cover for the 75th anniversary of Superman. And Dan, do you want to further explain the cover?
Well, it was this Chris Burnham cover for Superman Unchained #4 as a variant, and I thought it was so awesome because it was like a callback to the Silver Age, I think. I think that was the era that it was supposed to be calling back to. And it was Superman being like the Noah of the dinosaur age, where he's like taking all the dinosaurs and putting them in a rocket before the meteor hits and kills all the dinosaurs, like, the Great Flood in the Bible. And I was like, this is awesome. I wish there were stories like this in the comics right now, because I would read them, because that just sounds like so much goofy fun. But, when you get to the interior of the book, it's, takes itself really seriously and is kind of gritty and grim looking, and Superman never smiles anymore in this 52 universe kind of thing. And we were talking about how seriously superhero properties have been taking themselves lately, and whether or not we like that. That's sort of where the conversation was going, and Deadpoolzilla thought it would be a good topic for a video.
Yeah. So pretty much, it falls under a video I did a long time, a while ago, of realism versus escapism. But this is more like when comic books take themselves too seriously. And I'm pretty sure one comic that you could probably say started, well, the two biggest you could say started that trend were Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen.
Yeah, I mean, people have been saying for the longest time, and Alan Moore and Frank Miller have been two of the most vocal about this, and that the comic book companies have just been, putting out that tone that they establish in those two books and applying them to all of their characters, and that's just what's been going on for the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And I honestly am starting to get a little sick of it. The reason I'm reading more Marvel than I am DC right now is because Marvel's been a little bit more embracing of the goofier parts of their history and taking them seriously enough where the stories still have some emotional resonance and weight to them, and they can still talk about things that are going on in the real world in an interesting way, but it's not trying to be the most self-important and serious thing in the world. It knows that it's a story about dudes in spandex beating things up, because that's ultimately what superhero stories are, right? I mean, at their core.
Yeah. Now, when I was talking earlier about Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen, if you like them, that's fine. I like them to an extent. I understand that obviously, don't get me wrong, they were big helps to the comic book community of showing the world this could be taken seriously. However, having said that, I like my comic books ridiculous sometimes. I like reading comics obviously, with you, Dan, it's comic books like Daredevil, Born Again, and Spider-Man Reign, and so many other stories that you and I like that are very serious, but the other times we're at its core, like you said, it's guys in costumes fighting other guys in costumes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the problem here is it's an oversimplification of what the comic book companies think people want to a degree, especially with DC right now. There's room for every type of tone with these characters, and that's why I think they've endured for so long, is because you can do so many different things with them. It's just that, it seems to be, as of late, the dark and the grim and the gritty is what they think everybody wants, and I guess me and you might be the minority, because the market seems to be supporting that sort of thing.
Yeah. Again, this is probably why I'm more of a Marvel than DC these days. And don't get me wrong, I love DC all my heart. It's just the 52, like you said, has just been trying to take itself too seriously, and there's not a lot of room for fun stuff. Good examples of this over at Marvel are the Future Foundation and Daredevil, which are both sadly ending. So those probably weren't the best examples.
Well, I mean, it's sort of something that I've been thinking about too, and how we as fans, I think, might take this stuff a little too seriously sometimes, where I think I like the Marvel films because they are so they're not afraid to like go against what a fan expects to see or wants to see in a movie. Like that's why I liked Iron Man 3 as much as I did. I know a lot of people don't like that movie, but I like it because it defied my expectations in an interesting way, and I thought the movie worked well in what it was trying to say and its ideas and its themes and things like that. Whereas like with DC, like The Dark Knight proved to be really popular in its tone and like how it was an intelligent movie and had things to say. And then after that, they're putting out all these movies that think that they're like the most intellectually driven, serious kind of movie ever to be shown in theaters. Like they're so self-important, and I'm starting to get sick of that specific kind of take on superheroes. And that's what I think a lot of the DC Comics as of late have been treating themselves as. Not as a whole, because I'm not reading their whole line. And I'm reading a few things that aren't like that. That's the few things that I'm reading from DC, like Aquaman and other books, don't take themselves seriously like that. But I've noticed that as a sort of trend with DC specifically.
Yeah. My thing with it is that when you're talking about the Marvel movies, they have serious moments. They have serious themes to them, but at the same time, they know they're doing a superhero movie. And I
exactly.
think, like with Avengers, the reason why it got so popular, because it's fun. It's a fun film. I mean, there's no like intellectual like there are some good moments in there that are very deep, but on its whole, they know they're making one big action film, and I think that's what a lot of people want, is that they just wanted a fun superhero movie that could be good at the same time. Where you have DC now, not to discredit, the Nolan films or Man of Steel, but like you said, they're trying, like every DC movie is just trying to be deep and intellectual and just trying to like be, this movie will make you think and and not make you want to not read the DC comics. That sentence could have been done better.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's a problem of identity. I think the Marvel films, the people that are behind the Marvel films, it's very evident to me that they're well versed in sort of the classic Marvel archetype for a story, where like you have these really goofy things going on in the universe. Like there's dudes with purple and green tights on riding a bat glider that throws pumpkins at a guy in a spider costume. But it's all grounded in realistic characterizations, and they still get to say something about the way we live our lives in the world that we live in contemporarily. And like they went back and they've read the classic Stan Lee, Jack Kirby runs and then post that kind of stuff. And that's the sort of tone that they're trying to capture in the films. Whereas like I feel as if the DC films are just really bleak, and like they're all trying to be Dark Knight Returns, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. But hopefully that won't be the way either. And it's not just with Marvel and DC, and I know we've been talking a lot about the Marvel and DC stuff, but there are comics out there that either take themselves too seriously or, comics out there that can be really fun. Case in point, Image. I love Image right now, because it can be fun and serious at the same time. Jonathan Hickman's East of West, it can be dark and gritty. At the same time, it knows when to have fun. The whole universe itself is really fun. Matt Fraction's Sex Criminals is really good. It also balances fun and darkness as well. And same with his Satellite Sam comic.
Yeah. I mean, Image is a little bit of a different animal because the creators have much more freedom as to what kind of story they want to tell. So obviously they're going to have much more variety in the kind of stories that you have at their company, because there's no kind of like line-wide mandate for like, this is going to be the tone for all of our books, which is nice if you just want to read comic book stories, you're not interested in superhero characters at all. Like, for example, I had the first issue had Brubaker and Steve Epting's Velvet comic from Image, which was fantastic. I recommend that to anybody. And it was a really interesting, Cold War spy kind of comic.
Hang on a second, Dan.
Sure.
Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. You were saying, Dan?
Yeah, I was just saying that, like, to your point about how Image has a very diverse line, because there's no sort of line-wide mandate as to what sort of stories it can tell, and tone-wise, I suppose, where, like, if you look at the two companies, Marvel and DC, there's definitely, like, a mandated tone for all of the books, where Marvel has been a little bit lighter, a little bit more loose and goofy and traditional Marvel superhero kind of thing, which I personally just like better. It's a taste thing. And DC has been a little bit more of a gritty, darker kind of thing, which in my superheroes just isn't to my taste necessarily. But I like Image. What I've read, the little I've read of it lately, I've been sort of turned off by a lot of this stuff going on in mainstream comics as of late, and I checked out the first issue of Brubaker and Epting's Velvet comic, and that was a sort of James Bondian-esque, Cold War spy story, which I really like. So I was really pleased to see that, and I'm sure there's other comics that are a little bit more lighter in tone, a little bit and much more darker in tone than what I was reading. So yeah, the Image is doing it right. I mean, in that if you're looking for things that aren't one tone or the other, because that's sort of a black and white choice at this point between the big two companies. Image is a good place to go, and those books don't take themselves as seriously because they don't have the longevity of the superhero characters. I think a lot of the time the big two companies are like, oh, our characters have been around for a long time. Therefore they are like the most culturally important thing ever. Which the characters are culturally important and all. Don't get me wrong, I really like their superhero characters, but I feel like they take them a little bit too seriously. Maybe they give them a little too much reverence. I don't know.
Yeah. By the way, Dan, when you brought up James Bond, it reminded me something. Do you want to be a part of my James Bond Q&A I'm doing soon?
If I'm around, sure, that'd be awesome.
All right. But yeah, that's kind of the thing, is that me personally, not to discredit every single serious superhero comic at all. Like we talked about earlier, there can be a line where I can enjoy serious comics, but for the most part, I want to shut my brain off and read someone jumping off of rooftops and fighting a guy who's going to blow up the world with a can of mayonnaise or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's room for everything. I mean, superhero comics don't need to be stupid. They can still have thought put into them. They can still say interesting things. They just don't have to act like, this is the most serious intellectual exercise you're ever going to have. Because if I'm looking to have a true, hard-hitting and cutting-edge intellectual exercise, superheroes aren't where I'm going to go. The superheroes are the blockbuster kind of, summer blockbuster fun kind of equivalent to what I read. If I want to go read something about, the state of the world and stuff like that, I'll go read a novel or something. Not that I'm saying that comic books as a medium can't necessarily be about things that are just as interesting. And
because they've done that before, and it's
the superhero sort of thing. You know what I mean? I don't think every superhero story needs to be that, and I feel like a lot of the time they treat themselves like they are that.
Yeah. And sometimes, with a lot of these comics, when they're trying to do the whole world issue thing, sometimes it works. Other times it just feels like, wow, it's just the writer telling up how he feels.
Yeah, and there's merit in doing that too. It all depends on how you do it and if you do it well or not. It just seems to me that we're not getting as much variety as I would like. Maybe that's what I've been trying to say and have been articulating it poorly. I'm not sure. I think the comics taking them a little bit too seriously has translated into fans maybe taking it a little too seriously. Or maybe it's a chicken before the egg thing. Maybe we were taking it too seriously. And I mean, I'm personally guilty of doing that at some points where, you think these things are a little bit more intellectually charged or important than they actually are intending to be or actually are. I don't know. But, I feel like a lot of the people that went and saw Man of Steel, this is a really, really intelligent movie, and it did have some things to say, but it's by no means the most intelligent thing I've ever seen in it. The way the movie plays, it sort of acts like that, and I don't know, that kind of off-puts me, personally. I think it's just a taste issue. It's just something I've noticed, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I understand. My thing with it is that when it comes to stories like these, there are really good ones, but other times when it tries to take itself seriously and make it sound like it comes off really pious, you know what I mean? It comes off like, well, you should take this comic book seriously because I'm writing it, and this character is going to be dark and meaningful, and it's going to change how you look at the world, or go to church or stuff like that. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it works. Other times, it misses the mark completely, and it just comes off of, just kind of like, wow, you just made me feel like I had a shit day.
Yeah, and maybe it's an overcompensation kind of thing, because, like, for so long, comic books have had such an inferiority thing about them, where, like, they're either treated as stupid superheroes, the characters have been treated as sort of stupid, the medium has been treated as sort of a worthless kind of medium, which is not at all. But just in the general public, I think for a long time, comics were looked at as sort of like just, throwaway, cheesy entertainment. And maybe it's the sort of thing where people like me, write these stories to make people take us seriously, and that's just what it's become, an exercise in trying to be noticed and trying to be cutting edge, trying to be serious, so people don't talk about comics in that way anymore.
Yeah.
I think that perception is changing because of all the stories we've gotten that have been a little bit more serious and intellectually charged than before, but it's getting to the point where that's all that gets published now, and I think there's room between those two black and white choices. I don't think we need to be like mind-numbingly stupid, but I don't think we need to try to have a deep and intellectual exercise every time we read a comic book either.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing what you said about fans having a hand in the seriousness, and like you said earlier, like it could be that the comic book fans were trying to do that. I mean, hell, like you said, you and I have been guilty of this at times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to own up to it. I've taken this stuff way too seriously before. Yeah. I've sort of recently realized that there's not really too much point in doing that.
Yeah. Sometimes it makes you, sometimes when people do that, I mean, again, you and I have done this before, where we just stop and look at ourselves and be like, God damn, we're idiots.
Yeah, it's just a superhero character, Sometimes you need to ground yourself a little bit and be like, maybe Spider-Man isn't the most important thing in the world, And I feel like for a lot of people it becomes that, or at least they react to things that happen like that's the case, but, that's a whole different topic, I suppose.
Yeah.
I just think maybe that has somehow contributed to the way the stories have been written, or maybe it's people taking them more seriously because of the way the stories are written. I don't know. It's a chicken before the egg kind of thing. I'm not really sure what came first, just because I haven't researched it enough or haven't been around since, that Dark Knight Watchmen revolution kind of thing happened. But
yeah, that was and again, if you like those comics, that's totally fine. But
and I love them. I'm a big fan of both of them. I think they're very good, and I'm a big fan of Frank Miller's work. I like Alan Moore a lot. It's just that I don't want to read that every time I read a comic book.
Yeah, I mean, there's a time and place for it.
I'm a big fan of Stanley Spider-Man, too.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Claremont's X-Men. Like, there's so many different superhero things. Like, I think the recent Marvel stuff has been, like, similar to the Stan Lee Spider-Man or, like, the Claremont X-Men kind of thing, which I personally like a little bit more than the tone of Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. But, like, I read those books and they make me think about the world in an interesting way, which I like, too. So, I don't know.
Yeah. There is a time and place for being serious and when to have fun, and like you said earlier, it doesn't have to be like a social studies class every time I read a issue of Batman, or something like a psychological piece. You can do that in Batman, or you could do that in Superman. It doesn't have to be that every comic. I mean, sometimes I like to watch Batman fight sometimes I want to watch Batman fight the Condiment King.
Yeah, exactly, and I like that comics and superhero properties have gotten to the point where they can be serious enough to explore social issues, like you said.
I mean, that's what the story that's been behind Daredevil with that Jester story.
Yeah, and at the same time, that's had, the Legion of Monsters in it, which is, goofy over the top fun. Walking that line, I think the book that walks the line, that line the best, I think, at Marvel has been Daredevil. It's sort of in the classic Marvel vein that we've been talking about before, where it's goofy but can still comment on social issues relevantly. And I think that's what superheroes were always intended to be when they were first created, and that's sort of where I fall in my enjoyment of them. But I can see why people like the other sort of thing. Because I know I like those sorts of stories too. It's just the sort of thing where I think it's become an oversimplification. I mean, that's happening all over the place in our culture, but it's happening in comic books too.
Yeah. My thing is, like, sometimes I just like to get away from, the, big, big issues or stuff like that. And sometimes I just want to watch, some random, weird-ass explanation for something to happen, or, some reason why this villain is using, I don't know, a can of tuna to power his death ray. Sometimes I just want to watch something fun like that. And it's also, again, why I kind of prefer escapism over the realism in comics.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you. I think superheroes at their core are sort of escapist fiction, and we're getting farther away from that sometimes than I'd like. But, it all comes down to a taste issue.
Yeah. So, I've pretty much got what I've wanted to say out. What about you, Dan? Any closing thoughts?
I think I'm finished too. I just don't want to give the impression that I'm against intellectualism in comics, because that's not what I was trying to say at all. I just would like a better mix of the fun and the intellectual stuff, or to have a little bit more of a choice between super self-serious and goofy over-the-top fun, which I think Marvel's walking that line, and that's why I'm liking them as a company of the big two much more right now. But if that's your thing, I totally understand. It's just a taste issue, and I'd really be interested to hear what you guys think about this, because it's a very complicated topic. I feel like I haven't fully fleshed out my thoughts about it, because I don't know, I kind of need to write things down sometimes.
Well, we did kind of just think of this video on the fly, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to feel out my thoughts while I'm talking here, so if I sound a little incoherent or contradict myself a little bit in some places, that's probably why. But, yeah, I'm just sort of being scatterbrained now. I'm going to stop talking.
Yeah. Again, we're not discrediting, this video, hopefully this video doesn't come off like saying we hate DC. I kind of hate how DC's being run, but I don't hate DC in general.
Yeah, I mean, there's books from DC that I'm really liking, and most of the ones that I like are the ones that are at least able to have fun with themselves. Like Batman 66, Aquaman is a great time. Scott Snyder's Batman is fun. It's dark, but at the same time, I think it's not as self-serious and gritty as I've seen other Batman comics be before, which is sort of what I like about it.
Yeah. God, I so want to read more of Batman 66.
It's so awesome. Clock King was in the last issue. It was so great.
We need to convince Captain Logan to cosplay as the Clock King.
Oh, he probably would do it. He loves the Clock King. I wouldn't put it past him.
Just have him just refit the Riddler costume.
Yeah, that would probably work.
Yeah.
Put a clock on his face. But anyway, we're getting off topic.
Yeah. So anyway, guys, we're gonna leave it up to you. What do you think of seriousness in comics, or just having fun with it? Do you like one? Do you like the other? And where do you think it all kind of started? And do you think we'll ever find like a good even ground on not just one book but all books? Or would you not want that?
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what people think about fans taking it too seriously as well.
Yeah. So I want to thank my good friend Dan for joining me on this video.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic, because I've been noodling around in my mind for a little bit.
All right.
Maybe we could do a Milky Juice video about this sometime, because I'd love to hear the other guys' thoughts on this.
All right. I'll try to when we get together for the commentary tonight. I'll throw that idea to them.
All right, sounds good.
All right. But yeah, guys, we're out.
Bye.